welcome everyone. I'm Tao Mo, the SVP of Marketing at Uptempo. We're enterprise marketing planning software, and we're presenting this special event. It's exclusively for marketing operations professionals at any stage in their careers, and we will be providing a recording of the panel after this event as well. And I believe there's a next slide here of the agenda. Yes. So we're just going to go over some logistics in the beginning, then jump right into the panel discussion, and you will all have a chance to submit your Q&A for the panel. So you should see a Q&A button. If you're a Mac, it's on the bottom of your screen. On your PC, I don't really know where it is. It's floating somewhere. And then, of course, we're going to get into our breakout groups, which we will split the virtual room in half. You will automatically be assigned there and be able to turn on your video and audio and actively participate in a series of questions related to the topic today. And then everybody just coming back into the room, and we close the event. Again, if you have to go grab a bio break or a snack, feel free to do so. Lucky for you, not lucky for me. I've got to stay on the whole time. And just one important note, no mobile browsers, because you won't be able to participate in the breakout groups. So we've noticed that little quirk. But I'd like to introduce my wonderful co-host. Everybody knows him, Daryl Alfonso. I'll hand it over to you, Daryl.
Thanks, Tao. Hey, everyone. Good to see everybody. I missed you last month, but I'm back. And our baby is healthy, so that's all good things to be thankful for. And yeah, welcome to the breakout. This is so exciting. You know, this event really started as, I mean, we've been doing this for more than a year now. I swear it's going to be going on 2 years eventually. And it started as kind of like a marketing ops support group. Thanks, Brooke. It started as like a marketing ops support group, and it just kind of grew into just a place where we can share best practices. We always have great speakers, great panelists, just like the ones we have today, and really, really good discussions. So thank you all for coming. You know, an interesting fact, I was telling, hey, Victoria, good to see you. Interesting fact I was sharing with the group that sometimes we get people from Australia to come, which is crazy at this time. So, I mean, we always have people from EMEA, like Europe, you know, and that's a little bit tougher time. But can you imagine people from Australia come? That's like the middle of the night for them. And that's what I really love about this, like the people that work in our profession, you know, so always so dedicated, always so curious, always learning. So I'm that's so inspiring to me. And good to see you all here. If you're a returner, welcome back. I see tons of returners, so awesome. If this is your first time, welcome. And yeah, hopefully, please join us. Feel free to come every month. We do this every month. So I hope to see you there too. Okay, so the topic today is going to be the future of marketing operations. So we're talking about like standardizing processes. We're going to talk about technology, of course. We're going to talk about AI. We're going to talk about change management. And we handpicked a variety of different diverse talent, different stages, different stage companies. And I'm really excited to hear their perspective from all of it. And feel free to ask them questions too, so you can ask in the chat. We're going to get into the introductions. So I'm going to introduce the panelists. Let's go in order from pictures here. So Brandee, care to introduce yourself, please?
Oh, yeah. I feel like I finally know where I am in the Brady Bunch view. So this is good for me to know. So pleasure to be here again. Super excited. Hey, everyone. I'm Brandee Sanders. I am currently Chief Marketing Officer at Apromore, former CRO. So I've been on both sides of the Star Wars fence, as it was. Someone who sat in as an individual, worked in marketing operations and lived and breathed it for over a decade. So I know the pain and the assumptions that most C-level execs or VPs look at when they look at MOPS, not understanding perhaps how complex it can be. And I've also built and scaled teams. I've done everything from Series A to IPO, working with everything from tiny companies to nonprofits, and of course, notable names like Blackline, where we IPO'd. I've also worked with Sony Music, Observe AI, lots of revenue orchestration. So super excited to be here, talk about all of the magic that's going on in the market right now. And I'm very excited to talk about not just concept, but operational points turning into actual opportunities, whether that's career-wise or trajectory-wise. So excited to dive into it, and thrilled as always to be here.
Totally, totally. Thanks for coming. And I love all the leaders here have deep ops experience. And I love that path of like operations to CMO or operations to VP. Like that's the path. So thank you, Randy. Jeff, can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure thing. Hi, everybody. I'm Jeff Canada, and I lead marketing operations at OpenAI. I've been here for about 8 months now, which actually makes me a very tenured person at OpenAI. I think the company's only been around, well, what we know of OpenAI has only been around for a little while. Yeah, I've been in marketing for longer than I care to admit. Probably like a lot of you, I started as a generalist doing everything from field marketing to events to demand gen, and then really found my passion and my love of demand generation and marketing ops, and really started to focus. And actually, it was things like these kinds of forums and these kinds of groups that were such a pivotal and important part of my career. One, just to help me hone in and figure out what I wanted to do, but two, to learn and to share. Like, I love marketing ops professionals because regardless of if you work at a competitor to your company or, something completely tangentially different, it's great that we all are able to get together and share things that worked for us, because we know that everything is going to be unique to our business, but there are still some themes and some ideas that we can use kind of across the board. So really excited to be here to talk about all the things, and yeah, looking forward to it.
100%, 100%. Thanks, Jeff. Viggy, care to introduce yourself, please?
Awesome. All right. I'm Viggy Hegde. I'm the VP of Marketing and the Head of Marketing at a company called CompuDynamics. Probably you have never heard of this company because we are behind the scene company making a data centers. Basically provide all critical services and engineering for mission critical infrastructure that includes things like 911 and all the hyperscalers. We talk about AI and all this stuff. So all those technologies cloud live in a data center, and we make a data center a data center. So that's a really 10 seconds brief about myself. I've worked in the marketing all my life in various, the way Jeff and Brandee said, all forms, all shapes of the company, smaller companies in the United States, global companies, Fortune 50 companies to, startups. And I do not call myself as a marketing operations pro, because I call marketing operations as the brain and the heart of the marketing organization or go-to-market organization in general. So, anybody, and we're going to touch this later, but anybody who wants to really, whether they want to start their career or climb up the ladder, it's very important that they don't isolate them to marketing operations in a silo, rather broaden it up and build and learn those additional skill sets that you need to be, because every function in the go-to-market organization needs you.
Totally. Thanks, Viggy. Marketing touches everything. I think marketing owns the customer experience, and that's why our scope is so broad and can be everything in the kitchen sink. But I wouldn't have it any other way. Thanks, Viggy. Graham, introduce yourself, please.
Yes. Hi, my name is Graham. I'm the Director of Marketing Technology at DoorDash. I follow a slightly different path than many folks here. Like, I started sort of as a traditional PMM role. I was at Google for 10 years, and part of that at YouTube. I was always the tinkerer, the person getting into the weeds, the person looking at code when he shouldn't have been. And Google was great for that, and I learned a lot. And I would find all these like ways to drive efficiency across the different marketing orgs. And then I kind of landed in MarTech, where I was like, okay, I can bridge my passion for the tech and the data and sort of the nerdiness of it with my skills as a marketer. So I did that for a while at YouTube. YouTube is a huge ship, as with Google, and I decided last year that I wanted to go somewhere that is extremely fast paced and would be at the cutting edge of basically everything. And DoorDash fit the bill. So I now lead the MarTech team here at DoorDash. And we'll talk about this a little later. Like, we don't have a traditional marketing operations team. It's quite interesting. So, maybe there'll be some lessons and interesting discussions on that, but excited to be here.
Thanks, Graham. I was just typing in the chat that I appreciated the advice you gave me earlier on platforms and migrations and stuff. I have to fill you in. We didn't necessarily go in that direction, but that's another story for another time.
Oh, I love a
thanks.
good migration.
Yeah. Thanks, Graham. Jenny, please introduce yourself.
Hey, everybody. Jenny Coop. Great to be here. I'm currently the vice president at Nintex, and we're actually a workflow automation and improvement platform that leverages AI. So I like to geek out on this stuff, and so I consider myself a very sort of operationally indexed marketer, former CMO. Been doing this for 25 plus years. Been at companies all the way from zero to IPO, including a company called WebMD that you've probably heard of. But, really kind of cut my teeth back in like 2010, where I kind of felt like I had to, if I wanted to be a good marketing professional, I needed to be operationally indexed. And so, that meant I was one of the first customers at Marketo, for example, on their first customer panel, right? Getting certified in Salesforce. And so a big part of my soapbox I like to get on, and a key to my path has been embracing data, embracing the operational side of marketing in order to actually grow your career.
Love it. Love it. Thanks, Jenny. Trisha, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm Trisha Saunders, and I also did a stint at K2 Nintex. So nice to meet you, Jenny. I am the Director of Performance Marketing and Operations at the Trade Desk. I started my career in marketing operations about 8 years ago at Trimble when I created a shared services organization that was dedicated to bringing all of the processes across 5 different sectors and dozens of divisions into a single standardized process and system. So working with Chris Willis there, we kind of took on the world, and that's where my passion for operations began. So I'm a demand generation campaign field marketer from the core. Spent 30 years kind of in that dirt, and took this turn into marketing operations and realized that there's so much more I can impact from a strategy, being on the inside in this kind of spider role that impacts all of marketing. So really great to be here. I'm glad to be included, and nice to meet you all.
Thanks, Trisha. Yeah, great wealth of experience on the panel. I'm excited to dig in. And but I think before we do that, we're going to start with a poll. Cal?
Yes, I think we've got a couple just to warm up the crowd. So our first poll, what's the biggest challenge your marketing ops team faces today? So let's see where everyone is at, and maybe some of the advice will resonate with everyone today. So this poll will be firing up just momentarily here. There we go.
All
So
right.
feel free to answer, panelists as well. It's standardizing processes, emerging tech, not enough budget or resources. Never heard of
nice,
that.
Jeff.
Oh, yes,
wait.
It's just one selection. Alignment and managing data quality. Oh, okie dokie.
Biggest challenge poll. Oh, I can't vote.
I know, I was trying to click.
Yeah.
Oh, that's too
The
bad.
panelists were able to vote.
Well, I'll share with you what I'm going to vote for, but I wish I could vote. Anyway, one thing as we wait for the answer, I think really great polls, in my personal opinion, really great polls are where it's pretty split. So you get to see, it's so common to think that everyone is either in your boat or thinks the same way you do. Yeah. And then when you have a poll, it really shows that, we actually are kind of in different situations and have different So I really like polls where they're split. But anyway, that's just me.
Yeah. All right. Let's wrap it up and let's see where we're at here. Share the results of this poll. Okay. Oh, it's fairly
Keeping
split,
up with okay.
except
So
for
not
keeping up with.
emerging technologies is not the one that everyone's having
Mm.
challenge with. So that's interesting to know. So what's the official winner? The official winner is standardizing process across teams or regions. That's interesting. Okay, I didn't think that would be it. I think
That was
like
mine.
that was
too.
yours. I thought it
Yeah.
was going to be either budget or
Yeah.
aligning with other departments, which is what I was going to pick.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be those two as well. They're neck and neck.
Any
Well,
commentary from the panel on like what you voted for, what you think of the results?
Well, for me, one of the, when you talk about standardizing processes, this to me has always been the biggest challenge, especially like when you work at like a company like Trimble, where you have many, many divisions that all operate and have a different go-to-market strategy. So we had this kind of tight, loose, tight mentality where it's tight at the top, which this is our governance, this is what is not flexible. And then you have to give flexibility to people so that they can have their unique go-to-market, but then you have to bring it in tight at the bottom, like, are we reporting the same? Are we managing budgets the same? So having the flexibility, but still maintaining that standardized process, that's the big challenge. How do you give people what they need, but also keep them corralled, you know?
And then the funny part of this too, that's kind of linked into codification and standardization that goes to a much wider aperture. If you're a global organization like, EMEA, APAC, whatnot, GDPR, et cetera, is compliance and regulation. Because it goes from like, yes, this works in North America, in this Eastern territory. And then how do you take that standard rule set? So all of those little tendrils that reach out when you go to a global audience, particularly in a hypergrowth state, like any startup in B2B SaaS right now, huge problem for them because it's so fluid with how quickly, and I'm quite sure given the past few weeks, this might get looser, it might get tighter, I don't know, but the regulatory changes are going to give us whiplash, I think, over the next 18 to 24, for better or for worse. So I do think compliance is part of the underlying, it's the symptom is codification and standardization, but the root canal at the bottom of that is also tied to compliance because it's going to be risk mitigation and the cost of non-compliance. And it'll always come back on us in MOPS. That's like nearly a given. Yeah.
And
So
in
totally.
my opinion, it's also the cross-functional collaboration, because this is not just a challenge but also an opportunity particularly for the marketing ops folks, because oftentimes your counterparts in other side of the business like sales or IT, they do not really understand how marketing runs in a lot of organizations. So when you lend that help, provide them that insights for them to be successful, you will be a star. And this is my personal experience, right? It's a great opportunity to bring that relationship, build that relationship, and make it happen. And you'll really be appreciated.
Jeff, it looks like you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, like, while they were individual, like, responses, they all actually are super interlinked. Like, you can't do one without the other. So, like, yeah, sure, whichever one was the top voted. But honestly, like, resources define the technology. Technology defines some of the process. There's a lot of interplay and interchangeability between all of them. And I love what Sarah just wrote about in the chat about marketing ops having to influence without authority. And so much of it is about relationships and being that like strategic partner and building those relationships across your organization to implement new process, new technology, new things. And without that influence and that relationships that you build, everything else is worthless.
Go ahead, Jenny. And then let's get to the question, because we're literally going to talk about this soon.
Yeah, I would just add that, marketing really becomes that connective tissue across all those kind of key pillars. And that's where I think that is where our influence can come from. And so by sort of leaning in and playing that role, that kind of sets the table for everybody else. And that can kind of get everybody on the same page. And then that sort of, brings everybody along, which I think is important for us in our role.
Yeah, yeah. All right, great discussion already. Well, speaking of standardization, that's literally the next poll and also the first question. So so I'm gonna share the next poll. What's the greatest barrier to implementing standardized processes in your organization? And the options are lack of buy-in from leadership. Okay, that's interesting. Resistance to change across teams. Literally low-key think that's going to win. Inconsistent technology adoption, regional or departmental silos. Oh, that's a really good one too. Limited resources and bandwidth, and lack of skills and training. So we have six different ones. We'll see. We'll see. Yeah, while we're waiting for the results, I got into fights about this topic when I was at AWS all the time. And this one guy, you know, he was super frustrated. He just told me, he was like, you can never have the same process for everyone. It'll never work. And I thought that was pretty contentious. I don't know. I guess we'll hear what the panelists think.
That mindset is awful.
My answer is always watch me.
I wish you were in the room with me when that happened. I was just like, watch me. Okay, so let's talk about the results now real quick. For the webinar team, can the audience see the results now? Can everyone see the results? No, you cannot see the results.
Not yet.
So now we have to.
Yeah, when you share the results, team, I think everyone should be able to see it. Are you sharing it now? And are people seeing it? Yes. So you should be able to see the results.
I think Courtney is diagnosing this with us. Yeah, Courtney, can you see it? Okay.
It is.
Cool. All right. So the winner is resistance to change across teams at 36%. Wow. Closely followed by regional or departmental silos. And barely anybody thinks inconsistent technology adoption. So that's interesting. Let's start with Graham. What'd you vote for? And was it different than what the winner was?
No, actually, I have something entirely different. I think this is like and I've done this at sort of very large scale, obviously, company like YouTube, we're global. Like when COVID hit, we had to implement like standard process across the entire company. And there's so much nuance. And I think one of the things that people miss is they go, okay, I'm gonna create a brief, one size fits all brief or one size fits all process, et cetera. And often these are Google Docs, they're sheets, they're some sort of like standard thing. And actually, it's impossible to do that. Like you have to implement, like it's MarTech in itself. Like you need to have operations tech, right? Like there has to be a technology, and it could be Airtable, it could be Coda, it could be like some of these tools, but someone has to go in and set these things up so that there is always an efficient path, because the resistance comes from, you know, the worst case scenario, you have to fill in 10 briefs, you have to go to 10 committees, that it's wild, right? But some people just have small things, and we don't want them to bypass the entire process. We want them to have like a green path, right? Like a quick, you get to skip these approvals because pre-approved, et cetera, et cetera. And in order to do that efficiently, you can't just have like a 20-page Google Doc where you tell people to like, oh, skip to section 2, skip. Like you have to have the technology to support the operational, like the process. And that, if you don't have that, it is very difficult to sell people on a standardized process, because there will always be that resistance to like, yeah, but in my situation, I don't need all these extra options. And like and just to super close that out, like the way it would work is like, you can imagine it as like a really in-depth form where the first thing you do is you say what kind of thing, and then we spit out the path for you. It's tailored. You get a personalized Google template, like a template with what you need to, only with what you need to fill in, not all the extra stuff. You get automatic.
Are you kind of saying like, that's really interesting. Are you kind of saying for the major things, there's a standardized process, but for these like maybe small pilots or like small
No, but
adjustment.
see, it is a standardized process. So like you create a standardized process that encapsulates all the possible scenarios. But rather than trying to tell people like, oh, if you do this, you could go to this link. If you do this, you go to this link. Everyone goes to the same funnel. You have visibility over everything. It's just that instead of sending people all of the things, including the things they don't need to do, that people resist that, right? But if you're like, hey, you go to this place, you say it's a small thing, small campaign or campaign modification, you click next, we're only going to ask you the relevant questions. We're not going to throw like 25 additional things at you. And so from my side, I have visibility on everything. People only need to do the things that they need to do. And I don't have to go and tell them like, oh yeah, you go fill in this brief or you go have this approval meeting. But you have to have the technology to do that. Like you can't just be like, you know, here, start a Slack thread and here's a doc. And like, it just doesn't, it's impossible to manage that at scale.
All of
So
this. Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying that sounds like a robust, either like Workfront or Jira setup, right? That has like the dependencies.
So you can build it with Google Forms and Sheets if you want. You just need someone to like write some app script. So that's the thing. It needs investment. Like you can't have just like a non-technical person support this tech. And that's the problem is I think sometimes people will come up with the process, but we forget that like you need the tech to support the process. Like otherwise the process will fall apart because you will have trouble enforcing it. People will get annoyed by it. People will think it's worth skipping. And the solution to that is to have a single process, but help people go down like the optimal path. Like don't give people a reason to try to like find ways around your standardized process, right?
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Any other comments on this?
I'm totally going to jump in here because most recently I started looking at the idea of processes. So like we all know we have templates that we bring from our other jobs, things that we know, hey, this worked at XYZ company. We might be able to use it here. Here's how we did our forms. Here's a template from the last campaign I did that went good. But what's really interesting is because the behavior, the maturity, the budget, and the ever revolving headcount of the last few years rapidly changing on MOPS, I'm going to go like above and beyond just like hiring or having a technical literate person, because that person can bounce and be like, look, I'm going to go do yoga in Bali. I'm out. And then all of a sudden you're inheriting this complex thing that someone on the team has to bring in without having been a part of like the generative, let's process mine this. The investment that I think about all the time with this now through a very different lens is process mining, because it's a game changer for MOPS. And so it's easy for us to say, hey, we'll go talk to Bob and June and Sarah and say, what do you do to do this? When do you pass it? What's the approval? Is there a bottleneck? Is there a ping pong moment? And what's fascinating is that what they think the approval process is and what the other person thinks it is can literally be different. And so we'll build processes around that, and then all of a sudden it breaks. So if you can visualize through process mining this actual steps, like literally it takes work, but you can do it. It'll highlight bottlenecks. It'll identify opportunities to automate. It'll strengthen that. And like, for example, we looked at it and it revealed delays in lead hands-offs. Things that we had set up, we were like, no, speed to lead is great. We're in a good place. But it allowed you to like optimize handoff, boost the conversion rates, because speed to lead and process mining basically gave the MOPS team an X-ray that was documented, non-biased, non-self-reporting. It exported from the audit logs, and you could see this, and it really allowed us to make smarter, faster decisions. So when I think about that a lot, it also helps controls, because to Graham's point, there's compliance, there's approval workflows. If two people quit and go somewhere else to another like startup, and there's, you know, someone's in the middle who might not understand that, all of the visualization for what you thought was your process and what your process actually is documented and explicit. And in addition to that, if you, I'll make it up, triple your output and suddenly you have 2x the amount of work, it lets you enhance and have automation around compliance and things like that. That is super important, because most folks who are dealing with like growth or go do revenue, right? If you actually achieve that goal, everything you built to do steps A through C may not work for D through F, and you don't have time to rip things out in the middle of a quarter. So honestly, I think process mining and operationalizing that like documentatively with an investment is huge. It's huge.
I love that. I love that. Trisha?
Well, I was going to kind of go back to the resistance of change, kind of that main idea. And one thing I found is, in my experience, is there's two things that can make this really painless. People are resistant to change when they're force-fed. And I think transparency was probably the biggest learning I've had in my career around change management and change process. The more we communicate upfront and early and engage teams and get their feedback and get their input, and so that they know their voice is heard, if we go to them and they get them to embrace the change, they'll work with us. If we force feed it on a platter and say, you will eat this, they will buck and scream and they will absolutely never embrace it. So I think transparency is probably the biggest tip I have for everyone. Tell them early, let them know how the results will go. And you could even start with a pilot, pilot the change, show how the results improve, then roll it out from that circle. But
yeah, you never want to get to the place where you're giving off the, oh, we're the smartest people in the room, so we are going to teach you marketers how to do this correctly, and you're either going to get on the train or off it. And just like Trisha said, like if you can get them in way at the beginning and ask them what they need and almost hint at the benefits that they're going to get from a process that you're going to be rolling out down the road, it's way better. Anyway, I know Jenny, you had your hand up, but did Trisha cover your point? Is that?
Yeah. Yeah, I think she did. Thank you.
Okay, got it.
I want to also say, kind of play a little bit of the devil's advocate, like to be careful not to have process for your process. Like, let's start small and like build for the webinar. Like build the process for your webinar. That's rinse and repeat. It's easy. You can get it. You can find how it breaks and start something small. So you're not having this process for this process and this process for this process. And then you're filing CTP reports and then blah, 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 blah. Like you want to get it. So like get it to work, get people to like what you've built, and then create something a little bit more robust. And granted, it's going to be different for each of your different businesses. Like OpenAI is very much like a startup, and we are moving so fast that putting a process in place, it's not resistance to change that I face here. It's the fact that everything is constantly changing. So I put a process in place and then everything's changed outside of the process. So my process no longer works. So if I over architect something, it becomes old and moldy in a week.
Yes.
So starting small, seeing what works, and then building upon it is really how I like to go.
Yeah. And that point, to your point, Jeff, so that fluidity and that agility is why investment in the mining part is so important, because you don't have to go, oh my God, we're going to go through this whole thing again. We're dragging people in a room. What do we do again? Like, oh, we're changing it a little, but not a lot. What does that do? Like, it's literally like visualizing it as a map, like a spaghetti bowl. And we're removing all of those blockers. So if they do the work at the beginning, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here because everyone's like, oh, someone said in the chat, like, oh, it's not important now. And I'm like, well, it'll be important when you get a $2 billion fine for some insane thing that happened. Look at TD Bank. I mean, I don't want to mention logos, but you can Google search for yourself. But like that compliance, it'll all come back down the hill to us. So it's like we have to manage up to them. So if they do the work at the front, particularly when you're early stage, investing in that is critical because you can simulate and model. So as an example, if you've loaded it and you've really done the mining, you can run a simulation and model and say, what happens if we have to cut budget by 50% and we lose Paris? What happens if I 2x campaign outbound? What does that do to the 3 poor souls who are in the middle there? Oh my gosh, that's 500 tasks from 10. So yeah, it's visualizing and modeling it and running simulation is key, because otherwise it literally won't scale. And 2 quarters from now, when the MOPS person leaves from burnout, they'll be staring at the ceiling. Gosh, I guess we should have done process mining.
Yeah. How about Graham? And then let's move to the next question because we still have a lot to cover, but go ahead, Graham.
Yeah, no, I think Jeff is spot on. Like the point that I would make, and COVID was obviously a special situation, but if you're building a process for webinars and you're making sure that is buttoned up, you should be thinking about, how would I add something to this? Like what happens when this process is going great and I want to like add a new campaign type, an email, whatever to this? Like, how do I make sure that the end state is that everyone goes to one place for support, for requests from marketing ops. And so make sure you don't silo yourself where you're like, okay, this is the best process ever for webinars, but now I'm going to have to come up with an entirely new system of record for other types like that. So just think about scale.
Totally. And I wrote down that what we want in marketing is repeatable success. And you can't do that if you're reinventing the wheel every time. The other thing I wrote down was, if things aren't standardized, it's really hard to make it more efficient. So if you have like 3 different processes, you can't really make it more efficient. You're just supporting 3 separate things. So that's why there's a need to standardize. But I appreciate the concern about, hey, let's not make process for process sake. Let's not make processes about our processes. I think there's a balance, which I think leads into the next poll. So we're going to talk about, okay, so the next poll is, how does your marketing ops team currently approach balancing agility and standardization? So this is kind of what we were talking about. So let's see what the options are. Okay, balance agility and standardization. So option 1, we prioritize agility even if it means less standardization. I bet Jeff's gonna pick that one. The next one is, we focus on standardization but are working on becoming more agile. Okay. Next is, we found a good balance between agility and standardization. All right, that one's losing. And then the last one is, we're still figuring out how to approach that balance. That's good. That's going to be
Courtney in the chat. Courtney in the chat with everyone. You're loading the deck.
Yeah. Well, hey, at least we're being honest here. That's what this group is about. Honesty. You know what I mean? If this was like those other webinars, would be like, yeah, we've have it 90% figured out.
No one has balance. If you do, please share. Thanks.
Yes,
Samantha.
actually, that would be good to know.
It's been vertigo since 2008, to be frank.
Yeah, we'll bring them up. They can take my spot. That's fine.
Yeah. I mean, this is kind of like a philosophical thing, but like it's kind of like, it's always a balance. You're always like, since things are moving, it's kind of like, I feel like ops is like walking on a tightrope, because everything's shifting. So you need to like shift your weight, and then something restructure, shift your weight again, and it's just like never the same.
All right, let's share the results.
Okay, results.
And then everybody should be able to see this on your screen. And yes, Courtney wins. The last option of still figuring out is 47%.
I'm not surprised actually on that, because it's each organization is different, right? It's I figure out, I find the magic bullet here, and I try to implement the same process, same model in the next org. No. So it's a universal challenge. So I'm not surprised to see 47% for that question.
Yeah, and I think
go ahead.
I was going to say, I think what that means is different depending on the stage of the company, how big is your team, what's the tech stack look like. I recently came from a company where they probably over-indexed, where they prioritized agility, beyond standardization. And now ultimately there's this house of cards that you've got to kind of, rebuild and start over, because you didn't build in the right checks and balances at key milestones. And now you've just painted yourself in a corner from an operational perspective, and there's no way to get out of it, right? Because you've just dug a hole too deep. And so I think the balance in my mind that is not going to solve all the problems, but at least align and build on what are those key decision points. Like, before you take a step in this direction, make sure you've at least checked these boxes, right? Because once that ship has sailed, then you've just got something else to manage, and you've now potentially solved one problem, but created 2 more. And so how do you at least mitigate that as much as possible?
It's like the orgs, their eyes are bigger than their stomach. Like, somebody rolled over, saw Tech Bro 101 on Twitter, and was like, we're going to do that AI tool. Here you go. And they lob it across the line, and you're like, what's the goal of this again? And they're like, agility, transformation, innovation, revenue. And you're like, okay. And so you implement it, but there's like no finish line. And so, to your point, Jenny, it's like Jenga. And then when that MOPS person leaves from burnout, the Jenga, it's the teetering thing that came up in the chat. where you're like, oh, so this is held up by a server in Boise with like a piece of chewing gum and a toothpick, and we're building our entire go-to-market on it and slapping AI on it. And we're like, oh, okay, well, the skin on this looks good, but when you lift up the hood, it's trash. So I think like that's a huge point, is that there's a balance there. And quite often, you know, MOPS gets pulled up to the exec level based off of a whim that may not be, again, based on the reality versus the perception of what these people actually do. Yeah.
So this one wasn't too far behind. We prioritize agility, even if it means less standardization. So that's at 27%. So that's interesting. Graham?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about it. I mean, as those of you in the US or Canada or Australia who know DoorDash, like DoorDash moves very quickly. We are like incredibly fast paced, right? Like and I think that's why DoorDash has been so successful, but that means like agility is key. And because I also work on the consumer side of the business, like we have to be able to respond to literally the weather, right? Like something happens, we need to tomorrow get things out. I think the challenge is making sure teams can be agile while also sort of protecting that user experience. And I think like that has to be the key for everything we do. And it is a big challenge, because standardized processes will help us sort of reduce the likelihood that mistakes are made, et cetera. But you have to balance that with being able to move quickly, because some businesses like ours, we have to, like we will fail as a business if we're not able to respond quickly and meet our customers where they are. And so it is sort of the B2B side is much easier for me to put in place standardization and sort of slowness. Whereas on the consumer side, it's a much more challenging balance, which is a fun challenge, but it is very difficult.
I have fair point. And I wonder what you think about this too. So I wrote this down as I was thinking about this question, and we're trying to balance agility and standardization. So sometimes at work, we find these really like cumbersome processes or cumbersome approval things, or like legal takes months to approve something, AppSec takes months to approve something. And you just know, like in your bones, that this sucks. And what do you all do? Do you like continue to like march uphill and try to take on those big projects, or do you just like, you know, like sometimes I just kind of be like, whatever, I can't fight this anymore. It's not worth my time. So is there like an assessment that you all use to like pick your battles and figure out what are these large efficiencies or projects that you're going to take on, even if like the world is against you, if you know what I mean? Comments on that one? Or
I think you have to. I think you have to kind of blaze the trail if you want to be instrumental in what that like end game needs to look like. I was in a situation recently where our Salesforce system was just a complete mess, but that was not an excuse for marketing to not be able to, function, give data, right? And so we had to kind of break away a little bit and of course build our own roadmap to what it looked like to get to what we thought was a healthy tech stack for marketing ops, independent of maybe other key areas of the business. We kind of had to bring them along with us and kind of again blaze that trail for them. And it was more work than it should have been. And should we have had to do that, and should it have been more collaborative and constructive? Absolutely. But we saw that wasn't going to happen. And so we knew that if we didn't take the reins, we were actually going to be in a harder position to report out to the business, to help scale the company, to help bring that efficiency that we're supposed to bring to both marketing and the tech stack. And so I think it can be harder, but I think that's kind of your role as a leader, particularly if you want to, kind of have a stake in what that end game looks like and should look like.
And that's something that you like stood up and you said, hey, our team has to address this. Everyone else thinks it's not important, but we're prioritizing it, and I'm putting myself on the line for this. Is that kind of the...
Yeah,
okay.
I think, and here's why. I think that's important, right? Here's why we feel like this is paramount and here's why we're prioritizing this, and here's what this means to you. And once we started doing that, we actually started to get a lot more buy-in and a lot more collaboration across the company. But I think I was in a situation where other parts of the business maybe were newer or had never seen this movie before. And so I had to kind of explain to them, hey, if we don't do these things now, I can tell you that in about 3 to 6 months, this is going to happen and this is going to happen. And then you think it's hard now, it's going to be 10 times harder in 6 months.
That's our, yep, plus 1,000. Trisha, I know you've had your hand up.
Yeah, well, for me, it's like this. If you take that squeaky wheel approach, all they hear is squeaky, And so, but I think you have to be persistent and you have to go at it again and again and again and again. So like a good example is at Trimble. For like 5 years, I had this diatribe on why we needed clean data, why we needed a lead space, why we needed standardization. And every single turn it met with resistance. It was $2 million. It wasn't the right time. We don't have the bandwidth. I had more excuses than ever. And I just kept working my way around the circle and creating more and more partnerships until finally I got this, like the IT and the sales team and the marketing, everybody in it together chanting, we need clean data, we need clean data. And when you get this collective chant, the chant is more uplifting than the squeak, So, but if it wasn't for those relationships, and I know my first round of Asked, I was flat out told, you'll never get a vendor like this approved for marketing. And I'm like, okay, well, we'll get it approved for IT and marketing. We'll get it approved for operations and revenue ops. We'll get it approved for sales and the executive team. It's like just asking as this lowly MOPS person, you don't need it, but you have to build your tribe, because it's big asks. And sometimes it just kind of comes as complaining if you don't have the right commitment of other teams, I think.
I love that. That's very inspiring. Like, because honestly, that does happen all the time. Like, hey, we need this, but leadership's like, no, you don't. so like to tie it with other departments, that's good. I love that, Trisha. Good one. Graham?
Yeah, I was just going to say on the I was joking in the chat that I don't have an issue with procurement, but I think one of the things that's important to do is like figure out what these processes are and who's involved and what they need before you need something. Like it is, if you're going to them for the first time and be like, oh, I want to purchase this new marketing automation platform, like you send them like a 5-line doc that says, we're convinced, they're going to get annoyed at you, most likely, right? And so if you've already talked to these teams, their process, you have all these things buttoned up, that means that ahead of time, when you're talking to the vendor, when you're talking to the provider, like what you need from them, right? Like when my team goes to our procurement team, we already have a business case. We've already got the stakeholders that Trisha mentioned. Like we've gone there because we know that's a requirement. And so the reason it's so quick is because we make their jobs so easy. Like procurement goes, wow, you've given us what, they're like, what do we do now, right? And so but you should do that before you need it, because otherwise it's like, of course you need something from me, like, so
Yep.
like that process
100%.
mining conversation, like go
Yeah.
figure out what the processes are.
This reminds me of sales. So if anyone has started in sales and has spent some time in sales as well, it's like challenger methodology. So you have to know, someone even said this in the chat, someone called it a mob. I wouldn't say mob. Although a chanting is more like feral screaming in the fetal position at the end of quarter, but I'll save that for the board meetings. I think that the challenger methodology is the same way. So you have to find out who your supporters are, who's the influencer, who's the person who says they can move the buy-in, but are more like just on the race, see they're over in the I section. Like you need to know who the actual needle movers are, and then you got to speak board language to them. So like if there's some random thing in MOPS that for a fact could increase speed to lead, then you can just say, what if we even hypothetically, we use this and it cuts approval times by, I'll make it up 20%. Then that means XYZ, this many more process leads in this short amount of time on the average deal size equals this much money. So you have to like go back and pull the thread, and then whatever it is they're reporting on in that board deck or pitching with, you can anchor on their ROI and somehow tether yourself to their balloon so they can carry it forward to those other execs, which I think is, it's like I don't want to say babysitting, but often we have to manage up and we have to also educate people and we have to constantly evangelize why this matters, because later when shit hits the fan, it always comes back to us. So I think that, to Graham's point and all the people in the chat who are saying like, oh, we've got to get these groups together, it's critical, but you just have to make sure you tether to the right person and that person's also going to be there and evangelize, not just in the one-on-one conversation, but that they actually have the push or the pull and they're close enough to revenue that they have the power and the authority, if you do not, to make those changes. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. We got to move. Let's see. Tao, should we do emerging tech or AI? What do you think?
I think we get to the hot stuff and go to AI.
You want to go to AI?
Like, I feel like we should just get the meat.
AI is over. Nothing to talk about. That's what Graham says. Okay, so let's go to the AI question. What's the most exciting opportunity for AI in marketing ops? And the options are personalizing customer experiences at scale, automating routine workflows and processes, improving campaign performance with real-time insights, enhancing data accuracy and governance, supporting strategic decision-making with predictive analytics. Okay, again, I wish I could vote, but I can just watch the results come in. Interesting, AI. Interesting.
What's AI?
What is it?
I know. I was gonna
Very
say
Very
too,
nice.
like Jeff's is asking Jeff is a pretty meta question. Like, do you,
Yeah,
I
no,
was-
that's a philosophical question, right? Like, it's not a
It's like
AI is all of us.
Yeah.
You gotta hold oh, you gotta hold the skull while you ask it, like Hamlet.
Yeah.
yeah, I wrote down for Jeff. I'm like, do you use Chat GPT to market Chat GPT? All the time, right? Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. No. When Tao and I get together and like we plan these events and stuff like that, Gen AI is like in the room with us.
Yes.
We can't live without it. It's literally
Yeah.
part of everything we do now. So
Just
okay.
a quick plug, if you have the ChatGPT desktop app on Mac, option spacebar is a quick command to pull it up, and I use that all day, every day. It pulls
Oh,
search bar, option spacebar. It's my new
Oh, it's
favorite.
kind of like the Finder thing.
Yeah.
Or Spotlight. Kind of like Spotlight. But now it's Chat GPT. Oh,
Yeah.
good one.
to know. All right,
Yep.
let's
You
share.
learn tactical
Oh,
stuff too.
automating workflows is far and away 43%.
Yes.
Automating
this is-
routine workflows and processes at 43%. And then followed by supporting strategic decision-making with predictive analytics at 21. Interesting. Anyone want to comment on this? What'd you vote for? Why? Yeah.
I'm just
Go
gonna
ahead.
make a comment. I'm gonna make a comment. So only because we just talked about how do you convince, right? The idea of how do you move the needle with these execs? The one that scored the lowest for us is the one that will score the highest for them. Data
Yes.
governance and compliance causes us billions of dollars in loss. And unless you want to be the next Google search anyone who just got fined for something, right? That is one of the sneaky petes that you can pop in front of the asks, because they're not going to care about making your workflows faster unless it means more money, which a lot of the time maybe it doesn't, because you can do more crappy campaigns. Doesn't mean you're going to get better revenue operations. So it's like we voted the lowest for the thing that for most execs would actually be on their 2025 bingo card with that board deck right now. So that is, very curious, because it's the least sexy to us, but it will be the most sexy for them. And those like goggles will matter with how we approach them to ask them, because we can anchor the other ones underneath compliance and governance.
It's also one of the biggest pushbacks that organizations have for using generative AI
It is.
and large language models is the fact that, like, is this accurate? Is this compliant? And that's one of the biggest, the biggest things that we're going to face as marketing operations professionals is going and saying, hey, I want to use this tool, and having data and security say, absolutely not. So it's about building that use case and being that, like, trying to like have that influence that you may or may not have. I I'm starting small with everything. Start small with your AI adoption and what you're doing with AI, and start to see just how great you can do things, even if it's a little bit removed from the systems and the workflows that you're doing, because it's all going to be a big part of everything.
Yeah, everything on that list is tied to standardization though. And remember how we started? So we've reversed ourselves because we were high. What was it? 23% in the first one. I know it got it ranked by a 27er, but it was tied. There was the two splits at 23, and one of those was standardization. And this is, like I said, it's the wrapper in which we can put automation, workflow, blah, 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 that will be more appealing to the exec side because you can tack a number on it. And there's a fear factor. Someone mentioned in the comments, like emotion, there's a fear factor there. Because if you say compliance and regulatory, guess what happens with, boop, here's SysOps and here's your admin and your IT guy that are like, yeah, boy, our ISO's coming up, baby, let's go. So like you can wrap some of the things under MOPS with that guardrail. And then to Jeff's point, even do like a pilot for it under the guise of compliance and standardization, but wrapping all of the other stuff that they deem less important that we know is mission critical. Because without the standardization, it's garbage in, garbage out without that hygiene. Yeah.
Yeah, I think to that point, it's all just about the application of the technology, right? I think that's where, the magic happens. I happen to be in Chicago now, and I'm at the Microsoft Ignite thing, and it's all about Copilot, right? Hey, 70% of, Fortune 500 companies use Copilot, and it's like, but everybody's like, okay, well, how do I use it? What do I use it for? Like, how can it really move my business? And ironically, the thing that came up literally yesterday was what people are most excited about, which is kind of shocking, is that it can actually mimic you on a Teams call. And so businesses are talking about how to use AI to mimic somebody on a Teams call so that their people can actually go do other things. And it's like, okay, so that's an interesting application of AI. Like, how does that impact my business? So I think it still, to me, feels like there's so many use cases and applications that we're still trying to figure out, like, what is the best application for my business? And that's going to vary depending on, again, the business problems that you're trying to solve.
Viggy?
Yeah,
What'd you vote for?
it's interesting. We all talk about how we can use leverage AI and machine learning in our day-to-day life. But from a business point of view, and this is based on my personal experience, right? I had the opportunity to talk with some of these cutting-edge service providers like OpenAI, CoreWeave, the future creators of AI applications and AI platforms. It's fascinating to see that. The way I look at it for marketing operations is table stake, right? How can I use generative AI for my content generation, content creation, and campaign optimization, data management, and all this stuff. But the bigger opportunity is to really leverage AI in the ecosystem of what I call the CDP. It's a centralized data platform. Because take Google, because as a business, what business owners care, the leadership cares about, what can you do, marketing ops, to help me generate more revenue, right? So ultimately, that's what it boils down to, whether it's a CMO or head of demand gen, CRO, doesn't matter. The business cares about revenue. And if you look at the overall ecosystem of how the platforms that we use for demand generation, for lead generation, Google, LinkedIn, Meta, you name it, they all use AI. And how can we tap onto their algorithm and feed them? A simple example is, Google say, hey, give me your best lead and the worst lead, and I will find more good leads for you. I optimize your demand generation. You don't have to do, anything, right? So, and that's it's all driven by AI. And that is a great opportunity for folks in marketing operations function to kind of connect those dots and enable with your data, with your ecosystem data, and let the AI come in and help you.
Well, yeah, take the emotion out of it, right? Because everybody is doing this emotional spitballing all the time. Stop doing emotional decision making. Let's stop doing lead scoring based on, well, this looks good.
Right.
And that, it's kind of like you're playing with a recipe and throwing all these seasonings in. Let the data make the decision.
Exactly.
I can be devil's advocate here potentially, if that helps. Like I think as a company that is all about optimization, like the risk of losing too much control to AI, especially if the AI is managed by Google. So you just spit some things in and it does all that. Like it will optimize you think it's optimizing for what you want, and maybe that's true short term, but you're going to miss, like, it's not going to go, oh, I'm just going to do some like completely novel thing. I'm not going to, because it still has to work within your parameters, and companies like Google need to ensure that there's brand safety, et cetera. So they have really tight restrictions. And so you have to, like, AI is excellent at optimizing once you've already decided something. But if you sort of throw it in as a black box, you are in for a world of pain in the long term, especially when things are not working out and people come to you and say, hey, why is this not working? And you're like, well, we put it into the AI. We just feed our data and now it's not getting what we want. And you won't be able to explain why. You won't be. So I think, like, I'm very pro AI, just for the record. I just think that there's a careful balance here, right? Like, AI should be about improving things that you already kind of have a good insight on, and you shouldn't rely entirely on like doing things without your input. Now, if the AI is returning insights to you that you can then use for marketing or you can use for your business, that is different, right? Like, that's very valuable because it can data mine much more quickly than you can, and you might not have data scientists available. So I think that's where it's very valuable. Whereas the sort of black box optimization, I'm much more fearful of. I think that that's a very risky move in the medium to long term.
Totally.
I would
Oh.
agree on that. I
Mhm.
think from a marketing ops perspective, the way that I like to look at AI is just like, how can I make my job easier and do it better with the stuff that I'm doing right now? Yes, Microsoft will try to sell you this like AI view in Teams. Like, OpenAI might try to sell you whatever we're trying to sell at the moment. But ultimately, the things that I can do and the things that I do with AI on a daily basis is like really simple stuff, but simple stuff that saves me hours worth of work. Like turning a column of a spreadsheet into a comma separated list. Like doing that in ChatGPT saves me hours. There was an app script that I needed to build in Google yesterday because somebody left, didn't know what I was doing. Like somebody left and it broke. I have no idea how to write an app script in Google. I went to ChatGPT and said, write this for me. And they wrote something. It didn't work at first. I told them what wasn't working and it fixed it and I wrote it and I didn't have to go ask somebody for it. So like it is not super sexy and like integrated into everything that we're doing, but it is integrated into everything that I'm doing because I'm using it as a partner and as a tool to be the coder, the content writer, the data analyst, the researcher, that I just can't do all of those things well. And what that does is it sets us up for success as the AI expert because we get to learn what these LLMs are good at and what they aren't. For when they do start to be even more integrated, we can say, hey, don't use this like input, output scenario that Graham was talking about for it because it's black boxy. Let's use something else that's not. And that's where we can really, like, by getting in and becoming that expert now, the same way we did when like 10, 15 years ago when marketing automation became a thing. Marketing automation, they were trying to sell us on all of these crazy things that half of us still don't do in our marketing automation tools. What we did was we went and we learned how to like change a data value, send an email, build a marketing program. And then we became the expert in that. And now we are doing what we're doing. So that's my thought. I think AI will be a bigger part, but AI needs to catch up and do better, to be honest.
That's a great point as well, Jeff. It's self-help, right? You have to depend on IT sometimes, developers and so many things where you can do a lot of the stuff. Even if you're not a programmer, you can technically, do a lot of the stuff using AI.
Yeah, and I think this is, I particularly like this about the new ChatGPT models is like they will walk you through their rationale and their thinking. And I think like that's the key difference here is like if you're using it if you're a somewhat technical person, or maybe you're just sort of gradually interested in it and you're getting it to generate an app script for you, like you are losing out a huge opportunity if you're not asking ChatGPT to also comment every line of that file to explain what it does. Because yes, you could do what Jeff does and like if it's got an error, you could put it back and you could definitely do that as well. But if you can see what it does, you might find, I just have to make a small change. I understand what all this code does. I'm learning. And you will do that over and over. And eventually you'll say, you know what, I have a pretty good grasp of JavaScript or app script. I'm going to be able to, when I next see it, I'm going to know kind of how this works. And I think it's so important that we use AI to teach us and make us better while also making us more efficient. I'm not going to write SQL from scratch anymore. I know SQL, but I can use ChatGPT to do it much more quickly. But I did that by learning. And if someone on my team were to skip that process, I would be very worried. Like, I want them to know, but I want them to use AI to be faster at it.
Great points. Great points. So we are going to break it up a little bit and change pace. And we're going to talk about the 7P framework and kind of get everybody's feedback. And then after we talk about the 7P framework, which I think is going to be interesting to get everybody's feedback on, then we are going to go back to the questions and then do Q&A. But really great conversation so far, folks. Really great. All right, so let's talk about the 7P framework. Give me a second. I'm going to share my screen. And then, Graham, you're okay? You were just didn't lower your hand yet?
Yeah, I think he's good. I just think he didn't lower his hand.
Okay. All right.
Great. You see it.
So we're pausing just to talk about a framework really quickly and get feedback from the panelists. So I presented this. This is something that I've been working on with Mike Rizzo, the team at marketingops.com. Tao's taking a look at this. Jim from Uptempo. A lot of really great feedback. And I was contemplating this issue that so many ops people have, and people keep saying that we're not strategic, right? People say, hey, the ops team, they're not strategic. Or I literally remember, I think 2 or 3 people that I was mentoring over the past few months, they told me their number one concern was their boss said they weren't strategic. And that kind of, that hurts, I think, all of us. And so I started to study strategy consulting, right? Like, what's more strategic than strategy consulting? It's literally strategy. And I came across the 7S model by McKinsey, and it's to evaluate change management and organizational effectiveness. And I was like, you know what, this doesn't really work for marketing. So we put together the 7P model of marketing operations, and this is supposed to be a framework that helps you sort of assess and evaluate your marketing operations function, or how you do marketing in your organization. So really excited to share it with you. I shared it with the panelists earlier so we can get your feedback, but there's essentially 7 things that you check for. There's planning, and planning is like, I only have my one screen, so I'm just gonna have to kind of go off this slide. But aligning revenue and goals, like OKRs. There's PMO, which is project management office. That means, like, how are your processes at work and how are your large scale projects managed? Platforms, which is obvious, is like the tech stack. Performance is how are your campaigns and initiatives performing? How does it connect to revenue? And what adjustments do you need to make? How do you optimize it? Partnerships is a little bit of a stretch. It had to start with a P, right? But partnerships means the partnerships that you have internally. It could be externally, but it's mostly internally with the other GTM teams. And prioritization is how you do resource management, road mapping, and sequencing of your initiatives. And then finally, people. People is, do you have the right team in place? Do you have the right skills to get the job done and to help marketers and salespeople achieve their objectives? And how do you get people to go along with the changes? And I'll open it up to the panel in just a second, but the way that you're supposed to use this at work, the goal when we're all done sort of working and getting feedback on this, the goal is you're able to take this to your organization, do this check, and see, like, where are our strengths and weaknesses, and create a plan to address any gaps that you have within this framework. So for example, if you're talking about planning, it's like, does marketing initiatives align to the revenue goals and to the sales goals, right? Do they or do they not? That's like a good check. And then for platforms, do you have the right tech stack to get your organization to where you want to go? For tech stack, I think of 2 things when I think about, do you have the right tools? Number one, I think about experience for the customer and experience for the marketer or the user. So those should be, you should have a positive experience or the experience that you want for customers and for your internal customers. If you don't, that means you don't have the right tech stack or you're not using the tech stack the right way. So that's like the first check. The other check is data. So I think there's three areas where you really need data. So the first one is your campaign planning. You need the data on your audience, and you need it segmented correctly. You need to have their contact information, right? Oftentimes, if you're going to be doing if you're going to be contacting them, you need the data. So that's one. Your second piece is you need the data on how your campaigns performed and how customers interacted with your initiatives. And then thirdly, you need to understand how those campaigns or interactions translated into revenue. So you need those three things. And if you're missing those, then again, your tech stack is not sufficient or not to the level where it needs to be, or not being used to the level where it needs to be. So that's the overall idea. You take this you take this to work and you run these assessments. But I'll pause there and see any comments from the panelists. What do you think of the framework? Do you feel like you do some of this already? Which parts resonated with you? Which do you think that there's something maybe missing or wrong? Who wants to take? Jenny?
Yeah, I think for me, prioritization really resonated. I think I sort of equate that to alignment in terms of, hey, here's what we're going to do, first, second, third, right? Or whatever the order is. Marketo's got this order of operations that is sort of, a good tech example of that. But I think it's really important to make sure that not just what we're doing, how we're doing it, when we're doing it, but in what order? What is that optimal sequence? And I think that can sort of make or break the efficiency across all of these things, because if everyone's not sort of aligned to that, then you're probably going to disrupt each other and you're not even going to know it, versus being complementary. And so I think from that standpoint, this is sort of my PSA when I get into that. I think, real world example for us was, I think in a past life, we had marketing operations very aligned to finance, because that's what the company wanted and needed. And so that meant that we were using, Microsoft Power BI, and we were, doing things out of our data warehouse. And there wasn't as much discipline or adoption of Salesforce, for example. And so when I came in, we were very RevOps focused. And so we said, hey, how can you have a marketing operations team that isn't disciplined in Salesforce when that is the anchor point that the company now has? Maybe they didn't have it 3 years ago, but now they have it. And so in that particular example, we had to revisit our tech stack, make sure we had the right people who understood how to actually align with the business in terms of where they are now versus where they were. And so I think understanding that and auditing that and checking yourself, if you will, is what we're doing and how we're doing it, and the platform that we're using it is aligned to the business, and the prioritizations are shared prioritizations across your key stakeholders.
I love that. I almost think that, when you simplify it, almost everything is prioritization. What are you going to do first? And when you pick what you're going to do first, you're inherently saying you're going to do something second and third. So when you're making these choices, it's just a very strategic exercise to do prioritization. And that's why there's all these cool frameworks which you can use, right? You can use the RICE model, or you can use impact effort matrix, or these different quadrants. Very, inherently strategic exercise. Comments on what Jenny said? Any other comments on?
Yeah, if I can add a quick comment, it's great to see the evolution of your 4-pillar concept, Daryl. I still remember the one that you presented, I think last year or year before at MOPS Appaloosa. So this is kind of definitely the next generation of that model. And one thing that I also want to call out is that it's not always all 7 pillars are equal, or the way Jenny called out, prioritization could be important for some organizations. Partnership / collaboration could be the most important thing for other organizations. In my experience, and the way I look at it, the line between the marketing ops, revenue ops, sales ops, and go to market in general, this demarcation is blurring. Moving forward into this new gen marketing or go to market efforts, it's all about bringing that collaboration together cross functionally, right? So having that as a key pillar is very important, and in a lot of the models that I've seen, this cross-functional collaboration, especially for marketing operations folks, that's never been a key focus area. It's always been, process technology people, right? It's kind of people try to put more effort and money into those three areas, but it's very important that, all areas that you called out here, should be part of that key strategy.
Yeah, I have a couple things. So one is like, at the very least, I think what would help if you're facing that, hey, you're not very strategic. If you're facing that challenge, what could help is you just list these out and you come up with a plan to make sure that these are optimized, right? It's like, hey, these 7 things we know we need to nail in our marketing operations function, and we know that we'll be in good shape. And if we're missing one, then we obviously have to address it. So I think there's a very simple actual way that you could, you could try this out. I think the other thing is, I'd love to like learn from the group, how much at work do you try to like influence the larger business strategy, and how much do you continue to play just within your realm? And I guess this is going to be a little bit different for each, right? Because, obviously, if you're a CMO, you obviously have a lot of strategic insights or strategic. But I guess if you do, like, how much do you? I guess a better question is, how much do you step outside of your lane to influence other parts? And that could even be like the sales side or the product side. And where do you cut that off? Any takers to this question?
I'll throw one quick thing out, because you were just saying like, oh, this is like how we're viewing our world. And again, depends on the maturity of every organization, but I would say anchor on the OKRs for the people that we're rolling up to. So as an example, back when I was a director for marketing operations and like head of MOPS, we would have, well, we would try to have before, say, January 15th, the planning meeting where we would talk about, hey, here's next year's goal, the big highlights like ARR, growth, attach rate, la, la, la. And then they would break it down by like each quarter. Product is going to focus on these 4 OKRs, growth, attach rate, launches, whatever. And then marketing and demand gen, you have these 4, which is maybe like lead gen, cross-sell, upsell, whatever it might be. And then so if you know what the persons you're reporting into have as a priority, and they know it, you got to go all the way, I hate to say it, but go all the way back up to the board deck. And then find a way to make sure, as an example, if we have a personal KPI, I'll make it up of like, we want to cut campaign execution cycles in half, because then we can do 2x more or have more time to be more strategic versus the administrative assistant, executional, tactical label that we often get in the marketing operations side. You just have to anchor it on that OKR. So if you have a CMO, maybe VP demand gen, or even if you're lucky and you have a really great like VP MOPS or operations, you can say like, what are the highest level goals that we have for this quarter for you? And then find a way to like draw the dotted line on whatever we know as a team in marketing operations we have to do, and connect it and tether it to it, because that also leads back to the defense mechanism later when you have to defend the asks that you're going to do. Because if they can't see how that's tied to revenue or attach rate or customer land and expand or any of that, quite often they're not going to care what our priorities are, because they can't see the dotted line.
Tao, I need to check on the baby. Can you take over just for a second?
No problem.
It was
I
a
also
really
see
long
Trish.
stretch, by the way. So congratulations.
Yeah,
on
exactly.
I'm
Good
surprised
job,
he did that
baby.
long. I'm surprised
Or
he was able to
maybe-
go that long.
You
Yeah.
did it. That's pretty good.
Maybe the baby had thoughts to share as well, but I'm going to let Trisha speak. Baby, you're next in line.
Well, yeah, I was just gonna say to Daryl's question about do we insert ourselves in other parts of the company? I spend a lot of time saying that I'm a strategic arm to the business and that operational excellence is what I'm all about. And that's the most critical thing. And if I truly believe that, I can't not insert myself
Yep.
when I see operational issues within the company, whether it's from sales or creative or wherever it is. I mean, we have I think it's our obligation as MOPS leaders to go outside the seams of our roles, and if we got to stop thinking about those swim lanes, it's really water polo. That's what our old CEO at Trimble would always say. It's a game of water polo. We're all at the end and we all have different roles, but at the end of the day, we're one team, And so I think it's an obligation, really.
Yep. Alrighty, so we're gonna move on to the next question. So we're bringing it back. Anyway, please send us your feedback on the 7 Ps. Hopefully we'll finalize that and kind of share it with everybody later on. Really excited. But thanks for taking a look. The next one that we're gonna go to, I think Tao, you were gonna talk.
Yeah,
cover
we have polls, so might be an interesting one. How often does your MOPS team collaborate with cross-functional teams like sales, IT, or customer success when we're talking about going outside our lanes or outside our comfort zones? Let's see where people are at there. And please remember also, if you have specific questions for the panel, please type that into the Q&A at the bottom. We are going to do questions directly for them once this panel is wrapped up as well. So
I'll say while we're answering that panel, bring up swim lanes, because this is an interesting one. So I only know this through many disasters, right? So there will be a time, and Trisha, you are like hands down an expert at this, so you are fully qualified to cross those swim lanes. Sometimes what will happen is people get a little too big for their britches. And so if you've never closed a deal, I would not suggest standing in front of an AE and directing them. Or if you've never been in front of a renewal or had your name on a signature, I wouldn't necessarily say you want to approach them like, let me show you how to do that. Even if you know that's how it is. If you constantly insert and you don't have the certification, you've never done the job, or like Trisha, you haven't been there like by their side, being able to see these ups and downs for many years as a dedicated senior expert, I would say approach with caution and make sure you do have someone next to you, because if sometimes, and I've seen this time and again, both with my own teams and other teams that work around us, if you cross that lane, like, they're going to be like, the hell are you talking about? You've never closed a deal in your life. Don't tell me how to run an RFP. And that is actually validated. So even if you know how the operational side work, there's a human element to it. So the approach, I would just say approach with caution, because if you think you're an expert and you're really not, it sometimes you get a little too big for the britches, it will actually backfire and create a sense of mistrust. And then any of that hope for dual collaboration, like deeper bidirectionality, it'll get ixnayed because maybe sales, CS, whomever it might be, even the wrong exec that you approach. I know I did that as a director of MOPS because I, was learning how to do that.
Yes.
Before CMO, it gets very sensitive. So you have to there's almost like a psychology element to ops that I think like everyone doesn't recognize. Like a bartender is a psychologist in a lot of ways. You have to understand the psychology of sales and how it's different than the psychology of the people who are responsible for things like retention and churn. Hunter-gatherer versus alpha versus beta, however you want to slice and dice it. But the swim lane's so valuable, but just approach with caution, because sometimes if you don't understand how to speak their language, they're going to sniff it right out and be like, please, marketing is not, get out of here. Like, I don't want to hear it.
Yeah. Or even the art of asking the clarifying question from an inquisitive, curious manner. And I think that also doing those in my one-on-ones really helped as well. Just help me understand this and stuff. So we do have the results, and I'm actually very surprised to see how 41% is daily that you're working with these teams, which is great. I mean, I assume that's a good thing, not a bad thing in terms of daily.
Oh yeah, this is good. I think like our marketing ops folks are on it. Like honestly, I feel like earlier on in my career, man, I hated to collaborate. I was like, do your own thing. I'm gonna build Marketo. Leave me alone.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? And then like later on, I found out, oh wait, I need to work with these people. Yeah. The other thing about like what Brandee said, kind of inspired me to think about is it never works to go to another team and go like, hey, let me tell you how to do your job. I'm going to tell you exactly everything you're doing wrong. Like that never works. But for some reason, me included, we like think that'll work. like you come in and you say like, hey, I'm so smart. I'm like the savior to you. Like you've been doing your job wrong all this time. Aren't you glad I'm here to tell you what to do? So that I think is so important for collaboration, is to like understand that these are humans too, and that you kind of want to approach them like you want to be approached if there's something that you collaboratively need to work on together. Graham.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts. But one of the pieces that stands out is like, and there were a few surveys around like MarTech utilization and like utilization of the platforms that you manage. And I think if in your scenario, like if you have set up Marketo or Salesforce or whatever it is, and you've done that in a silo, you can almost guarantee there'll be low utilization of the platform, and you will not get all the benefits. And so if you have these daily conversations, you will know what sucks about their job, what they need help on. And of course, you're going to respond to the urgent needs, like they need help with X and Y. But at the same time, you will be able to come up with new ideas or new solutions to problems that they have not even thought about. And I think like a super quick example is like my team, having an exceptional team here. We're very tech savvy, but like we're going very deep in clean rooms, right? And we know all of the nuances of the different clean rooms, the different providers. And like when we have measurement challenges, we are able to go, hey, you know what? This might be a solution. We might be able to use this clean room to solve this measurement challenge. And like we know that because we're talking to them every day. Like we understand what their challenges are. And we certainly wouldn't have any success if we were just like, hey, we got this piece of tech, run off and do your best. See you guys later. We'll talk next week on our weekly, right? Like it has to be like a daily conversation.
Yeah. And I love the DoorDash example, by the way, Graham, because there's beyond, and I mean, everyone knows DoorDash because of, food delivery, and COVID really boomed that, but there's like all this diversification happening over there that I'm quite sure, assumably, is impacting marketing ops. Like they're doing like the home improvement thing with Lowe's. There's like a partnership, then there's the Sally Beauty stuff. So this is like way beyond the template or the systems that may have worked with like the 1.0 or the 2.5 version of what is marketing ops at DoorDash. And so I love when people are kind of explaining like this is a constant sense of agility because the turret could change on ICP. There's even the pet supply part of DoorDash. Like this is all fascinating because we could wake up tomorrow and like, hey, we were doing B2B SaaS and now we're going to be selling XYZ in this totally different market. And how do I carry that over? And ops is so critical to be able to also translate it because that team sells differently, markets differently. It's a different region, different compliance and regulations. It's great.
And I just want to follow up with the question about this poll in terms of, okay, how can MOPS professionals better align with these cross-functional teams? And Vicky, I think you had some thoughts on this.
Yeah, it's just basically, and I'm not surprised that, people responded that they meet cross-functionally every single day. And when you look at cross-function, don't look at, just sales and IT or finance as cross-functional. Within the marketing department, your counterparts in demand gen, that is technically cross-functional, if not cross-departmental. So having that kind of close collaboration is the number one thing, and having a shared goal and metrics. And I really like the way Brandee explained, be cautious about when you are in your swim lane, right? It's kind of, don't teach me what I'm good at because, it's not your domain. I'm the expert here, right? But this, if you take sales as an example, and this is something that I tried at my previous company, worked great, is sometimes they don't know what they don't know. And then people think that what they are doing is the right thing. And they continue they might see success, they may not in some cases, right? So one of the strategy that I implemented at one of my previous company was the Center of Excellence. It's a recurring daily stand-up call share what your findings are, because marketing ops, they are so close to the technology, the data and the patterns and analysis in general. They can add so much value to the cross-functional counterparts, your peers in other departments, especially sales and customer success. So having that, the regular collaboration with them is monumental for sales, for marketing operations. So the second part is centralized information. Right. Somebody talked about, building workflows and automation in Marketo and doing everything on your own versus, share those results and information that you're gathering from outside of your own MarTech stack that everybody has access to. Share that knowledge, share that insight. You're technically helping your peers and folks who are responsible for revenue generation. You're directly helping them. In other words, you are their virtual sales assistant.
Yeah.
And you know what, I'm actually curious about, Jeff, in your OpenAI organization. How has it been better or worse being collaborating with cross-functional teams using AI, and do you have any different tactics for that in that organization at all?
It's interesting. This is a different type of situation for me at OpenAI because I'm part of the revenue ops team. This is the first time in my entire career that I've not been on the marketing team.
Wow, I'm sorry.
And
Worried. It's all
Yeah.
I mean, I have feelings, I have thoughts, but one of the things that actually makes it really that's a big pro is the fact that I'm so deeply ingrained and have a really great understanding of sales strategy, sales goals, and what's going on that side of the business. And that was something I struggled with in my last role. And I had to create stand-up meetings and create a tofu team that had a weekly meeting to talk about these things. This time I'm having to inject myself onto the marketing team. To be honest, we're working on some collaboration tools, basically almost custom GPTs that are being trained on our own internal data so that I can go to get that kind of information without having to ping a bunch of people on Slack. From a MOPS perspective, I'd like to build custom GPTs for basically answering questions. I just did a marketing automation evaluation, and I fed the GPT all of the grading criteria, the requirements, the recordings of the demos, so that people could go and ask this MapQuest GPT information about a marketing automation platform instead of coming to me. And I see a lot of potential there. And I'm actually really excited about Canvas, which is kind of a newer functionality within ChatGPT where you can start to kind of collaborate. So you could have ChatGPT write some code for you, and you could share it with other people and have comments and the ability to kind of edit and engage with it on a more collaborative aspect. Because right now a lot of my interactions with ChatGPT are very private and personal, so nobody should be able to see what I'm asking ChatGPT, except for all of the crazy codes that I ask it to write all the time. But I think that there's a lot of opportunity and excitement around that.
Totally. Yeah. Same. I don't like anybody to look at my ChatGPT conversations. It's one of its how long did boil chicken again? Or my baby looks like that. Is this okay? Yeah, good conversations. I think we're gonna, Tao, what's next? Are we doing questions or are we gonna do breakout?
We are going to do questions. So I want to give the audience the opportunity. I know the chat's been fire. Everybody's been sharing. But if there are specific questions, and there are some, so I do want to pose that to the panel, that you have for this stellar panel, please put that in the Q&A there. And some questions have been answered by some of the panels who've typed in, but I want to give an opportunity for anyone else to weigh in as well. So I know Amy, hello Amy, you asked the panel, how many on the panel are in the marketing org versus a finance or RevOps org? I struggle with marketing considered us part of their org because we're in RevOps. So I know, Trisha, you did respond to that. And if you want to repeat your answer, and then if anybody else wants to weigh in on that as well.
I was just saying that, for
Mhm.
me, I've been a part of the marketing organization. And for delivery, I love that alignment. But for
Mhm.
strategic alignment, I think it would be better if I was a part of the revenue officers organization.
Mm.
Just because, I feel like there's always discussions taking place on the revenue side and on the sales operations side that I'm not always privy to. And I always feel like I have to insert myself and, kind of extract information rather than being a part of the sharing. And I know it's relationship building, but I just feel like if there's that alignment, I think it's better for the company, honestly.
I know Brandee has thoughts because I
Oh.
also have some same thoughts on this. I'm like, I definitely have that
Go
experience.
into the chat pool and we're going to get married because you're almost the same job and it's barely different sometimes depending upon the maturity of the org. Because the assumption would be if you've got a really all-star marketing ops person, they're already looking at funnel dynamics and deal size. They're already looking at pipeline velocity. We're already looking at ICP. We're already looking at attach rates. We're already looking at churn. So like there's two hemispheres and I've seen this and I've been very fortunate to even create a role that is a blend of these two where that marketing ops person is critical. So we're working with finance on the work back plan and we're talking about attach rates and deal velocity and all these other things. And then they can step back and say, now that I am involved and I'm a stakeholder and there's a respect and authority with the tag word RevOps on this, I can step back into the to-do and the tactical, which is how do I execute this? What's the timing? What are the SLAs? What do we have proper saturation in those geo regions? Did it work? Did it not work? And measuring the efficacy and then turning right back around and taking all the marketing ops data and tagging it into lead to opportunity or closed one and like owning those funnel dynamics. Because otherwise, if MOPS is off to the side, again, we all get, it's like you get put into an administrative thing and CEOs or CTOs or even your CMOs, if they're kind of illiterate, which I've seen more than a few who do not know what marketing operations is, but somehow own it. You'll have them off to the side thinking it's you make web pages and the emails go bye-byes. So like that's their mind, that's how they're thinking of it. It's they don't view it as strategic. So I try to marry these two. If they're two separate people, they work just as close as an SDR and an AE would. So they're informing each other bidirectionally. No one's steering the turret. It's like it has to be close because otherwise it'll be like, as an example, you ever hear someone say, oh, these leads are bad. These are bad leads. We don't have enough pipeline. And then you go through the stages from a RevOps mindset on the MOPS side, and you're like, well, a lot of these stall out in stage 1 and stage 2, which is sales side funnel. So how can we help you accelerate that instead of this is a top of funnel problem? So it's like the math has to be married for the two of them. And I highly encourage anyone who's like looking for growth in their career to start leaning in and listening to RevOps because it is, predictively, I think this will be more melded in the future than it will be separated. Yeah.
And I do want to go to Lily's question, but does anybody have any things to add on to Amy's? Nope. Okay, so I know, Lily, you asked, I want to start leveraging AI to improve data accuracy and governance, but not sure where to start. What are some recommendations, tools, processes? And then Graham, you asked about what data tool she's using today. And I don't think Lily responded to that.
They mentioned Zoom Info, but I think, I mean, this is something we think a lot about. We manage so many data integrations, data flows today that like there's making sure the metrics are correct, like the logic is working and there are no issues, but there's also like detecting anomalies, seeing when, proactively getting alerted. Like one of the issues that we struggle with is we produce all this data, all these reports, all these dashboards for downstream consumers, as in, our stakeholders. I don't want them to tell me something's wrong. Like I want to know that something's wrong. And I think AI, there's a unique opportunity here for AI to detect those anomalies and help break out the like signal and the noise, because we manage many thousands of pipelines, right? Like it is enormous. And so if every time there's an issue, I'm getting an alert, it's hard for me to know, like, is this an alert that I need to like stop what I'm doing and wake up at, get paged at 3 a.m.? Or is this like something we should look into and like optimize? And I think there's an opportunity for AI to help with that. And a lot of the individual tools are starting to offer anomaly detection, but I think this is where, if you have all your data in a warehouse, I suspect the key will be being able to like find the best in class like anomaly detection tool available to you, and then you plug it into your warehouse. That's probably, maybe that's the more sophisticated approach, but I think that this will be key. Like just telling me like, are there spikes that I should look at? Like, and then you gradually like adjust the sort of, I would love to say AI could do it automatically, but let's say at the beginning, it's maybe overly sensitive. You start to adjust those, but I think that's a sort of really helpful part that we need support on.
Hope that answers your question, Lily. And before we sneak into the breakouts, I do want to share some good news. We do have panelists who are hiring. So let's throw that up. Thank you, Alice. So I believe it is Trisha at Trade Desk and Graham at DoorDash. Any words you want to say? We definitely will share out those job postings whenever you have it. And of course, we always post on Career Love. But any comments you want to say about what you're looking for?
Well, sure. I'm looking for a marketing
Mhm.
operations manager.
Mhm.
This person would own the really our marketing operations roadmap, works with all of our campaign teams across the globe. So they need to really be that client services person within our marketing ops roles, helping to put things in market, work on strategy. And we're looking for someone probably like New York, California, Denver, where we have a big regional office that has marketers. So I'm getting ready to post that position. It should go up either, I think, at the end of this week, but you can also message me on LinkedIn. So it's LinkedIn/Trisha Saunders.
Perfect.
I love it. Hiring.
Yeah, and I'll
Hiring.
just share the
Go
link
ahead.
for the DoorDash roles. There's a couple MarTech
Perfect.
related roles now. There's a web platforms role, so managing our marketing sites and
Mhm.
conversion tagging, tracking, all of that. And then there's a data strategy role, which is
Mm.
a little more sort of technical in the sense that we're looking for someone who just loves to get in the weeds of the marketing data. So those two roles are available on the careers site.
I know Jeff at OpenAI will be posting a
Oh,
lot of roles at some point. So just giving everybody the sneak peek there. I heard he's
2025.
2025. Yes, after the holidays, get ready. Join
I
his
love
team.
it. I think the marketing ops jobs are coming back. I think
Yeah.
they're coming back. Keep us all posted. Thanks, Akande and Majda, for moderating. Our fearless moderators. Really appreciate that. I love the breakouts. And loved this session. And for all of you that were able to stay, I mean, this is a big event. This is like a longer one. And I love the dedication to just exploring these topics and to sharing your ideas. I really appreciate it. And I think we're gonna wrap.
Yeah.
Tal,
So
you
just
wanna?
some words.
Oh yeah, sorry, go ahead.
We want to keep making these better. So obviously we have a super short survey after this. If you could quickly fill it in, and somebody today will be getting a pair of AirPods 4. It's the latest one for attending. And we'll also share the recording out of the panel. Very busy panel. Again, thank you to our panelists this morning, and also those who stayed and those who participated in the breakouts. Thank you, Jeff. I was in your room. So that was fun. And of course, we are back, regular huddles on December 11th, last huddle of the year. I believe the theme is resiliency, so we will update the landing page with that topic. But yes, if you haven't joined those or haven't gotten the link, you just go there to register. It's the same Zoom link every month. It's a massive meeting. Everybody comes on, coffee, tea, bathrobes, whatever. And we talk about all the things. again. So we invite everybody to join there. Am I missing anything that I should have mentioned in the outro? Bum, 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 bum. Nope, I think I
No,
have
and yeah, and
everything.
thanks to all the chatters too, people in the chat. I love that's like one of my favorite parts of Huddle is just chatting with people. I
Yes.
feel like it's a big Slack channel. And yeah, and actually there is a Slack channel. So if you're not part of that,
Yes,
yeah, reach out to
we'll send that out
the Huddle
as well with,
team. Yeah, you can
with the
you can keep
recording.
the conversation going.
Yeah, and
Um,
we do have that Careers Love channel where we post all the jobs that we could
Yeah.
possibly see on MOPS as well. So Daryl, you can have the last word.
No, yeah, I think thanks to the panelists that are still here for this speaking. Thanks to our moderators. It's always a big job doing moderation, so I really appreciate it. And honestly, I hope to see many of you at the next one, December 11th. It's going to be shorter. It's only 60 minutes. It's usually only 60 minutes. So these are once a quarter we do longer ones. So
Yes.
all right. Great to see everybody. Have a great
Thank
rest of
you.
your work week. Take care. We'll see you next time.
Thanks,
Okay.
Janice.
Bye now,
Thanks,
everyone.
Samantha.